Let's say they want to just host a show at home and they just don't want to deal with Eventbrite or a ticketing platform or something like that and do it on this. It's also a great way that artists, musicians can network with each other and support the touring artists that are coming through. At the core, every artist could theoretically be a host, and it could start within the artist community hosting other artists too,
Jam
right?
Spaces, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are lots of tools that we provide to support on the back end. Like for online shows, we provide customer support. We also provide tech support to the users. Yeah. If you want to jump on, you can kick the tires on there. There's nothing is obligating. You can set up a profile, like a space profile or an artist profile, and just kind of mess around and see what's possible. Mm-hmm. One of the other features is you can drop an availability pin as an artist of where you want to play with a range of space and a date range. And every single host within that bubble, that radius pin that you drop, will get an email saying, Ari's looking for shows in your area between this date and this date.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book. Today, my guest is Dan Mangan. He is a 2-time Juno Award-winning and 2-time Polaris Music Prize listed musician and songwriter. If you don't know the Juno Awards, it's like Canada's version of the Grammys. He lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and he's released 5 studio LPs. He tours extensively. He sold out Massey Hall in Toronto. That's a 3,000 capacity theater. He has performed Glastonbury Festival and Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he has scored soundtracks for Netflix, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're not actually talking about his music career today, but now you know who he is and where he comes from. We're talking about the startup, the platform that he founded, Side Door, which it started as a house concert network, a way that you can book shows, book house concerts, and I guess alternative spaces, as he likes to call it, concerts. And they have a whole ticketing system, and we get into the nuances of how this works. Obviously, when the pandemic hit, they had to pivot. They then turned into live streaming. So now they do it all. They've paid out over $1 million to artists through the platform, through this ticketing platform with live stream shows and house concert shows. And I got really excited when I discovered them. They're a very new company. So they've had some pretty large artists that have used Side Door, including Vance Joy and Tom Odell, Busy Phillips, Broken Social Scene, Stephen Page, Sparta, Jim Cuddy. The list goes on. Colin Hay, Feist, all of that. So it's getting out there, and it is becoming known. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation, especially if you've ever done the house concert thing, or you're intrigued by playing alternative venues, or if you're even just looking for a live streaming platform. If the ones out there are not really cutting it for you and you have an audience that wants to buy tickets, this might be a solution. This is not we don't have an official partnership or anything like that. They're not paying me. This is just a company that I thought was really interesting and I wanted to highlight, and I'm rooting for, because as somebody who has played many house concerts over my career, I think it's a beautiful, magical experience, and that I think everybody should try. And sometimes it is more impactful playing a house concert in front of 30 people than playing a giant theater arena in front of 3,000 people. It is pretty special, and I highly recommend it. As always, you can find us at Ari's Take on all the socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and on Twitter. You should visit aristake.com and sign up on the email list. That is where you're going to get the most up-to-date information. But quickly pause this and follow this show, this podcast, whether you're on whatever platform you're on. Just hit that follow, like, subscribe button, the up thumb, whatever you're doing. Just show us some love. And if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review, that really helps. There was some negative Nancy in there that I did notice. Oh, I read these. Yes, I do. That they were upset that we were taking a break and that we re-aired one of the episodes, and I don't think that merited a 2-star review. We have to take breaks, Thomas. So that's what we do. So if we could bury that negative review with some other positive reviews, that would be appreciated. All right, let's kick into the show. Dan Mangan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. Nice
So
to be
where
here.
are you? Where are you coming to me from right now?
I am in Vancouver, BC, up in Great White North.
I am jealous of this beautiful studio that you're in right now with this upright and everything that you got going on back there. Probably not a bad place is this where you quarantined last year?
Kind of, yeah. I'm fortunate enough to have been kind of built this little studio into my home. It's also nicely soundproofed, and that comes in handy when the kids are freaking out upstairs. So I spend a lot of time down here. This is sort of where I can come for a meeting, and it can be reasonably quiet. That said, it is also not unusual that a small person would come in here and ask me for some granola balls or something in the middle of a meeting. Of
course. I think we are. Everybody is accustomed to that at this point. I just anticipate that there's going to be small humans that are climbing over everyone I'm speaking to over Zoom. That's just commonplace at this point. Cool. So in the process of writing the 3rd edition of my book, I stumbled upon Side Door, and I am, as a singer-songwriter who has performed over 100 house concert shows and just like done the house concert thing, it was very intriguing to me because I've explored a lot of the different platforms that have come and gone, some that are still around. All the house concerts that I've ever done have been, just the old-fashioned method. Send an email out. Does anybody want to host something? And like patchwork something together, and pass the hat, and you're on your way. Sell some merch, you're good to go. And there have been people in the space that other singer-songwriters that have tried something that like a platform that you've done, and I'm curious, without getting too much into kind of your whole journey and people. I've already set you up in the intro so everybody knows who you are, a brilliant singer-songwriter and touring artist. I'm curious to know, where did Side Door come from? And let's get to you can lead me all the way up to COVID with it, and then because I know you pivoted a little bit, which was also really smart.
Everything takes a turn at that point. Yeah,
but step me through the process and where this came from.
Well, okay, I booked my very first tour in 2006 using MySpace, and I hassled venues that had profiles on my MySpace. I also, what I would do is I would put all the places where I wanted to go as a gig listing, and then I would say call me, message me if you want to host me in St. Louis,
Right.
And that was sort of very old school early days of Side Door. But there was a pretty inciting moment where I begged this venue in Calgary called the Ironwood if I could, come and play. And eventually, after months of me harassing them, they said fine. And I came to Calgary and I played my show. And there's, 4 people there maybe. And, why would I expect anything different? Nobody knew who I was.
Right.
I didn't have a publicist. I had no team. It was totally DIY. And then I got invited 6 or 7 months later to go back to Calgary. And I played in this guy, Doug's backyard. My friend Lori, who was a singer-songwriter, invited me. And there's 60, 70 people there. And like you say, right? They pass the hat. Make $500, $600, $700, sold 1 million CDs back when CDs were a thing. The first show in the venue lost money and felt like a failure. The second show made so much more money and felt more importantly than the money, I had made a footprint in Calgary. There was a spark I could fan into a flame. And that feeling of oh my God, what I realized was a few things. I didn't need the venue. I needed Doug. I needed that guy who could kind of be my champion, because nobody knew who I was at Doug's backyard, at the beginning of the show.
Sure.
They just trusted him, and they were coming because he throws these a couple times a year or whatever. And so I had this sort of philosophy of I got to find a Doug in every town. And I'm going to work my way into every town, by finding a Doug, and then they will be my Trojan horse to like, you know, get me in that market. And the other thing that, you know, sort of became a very philosophical sort of like just not a tactic, but sort of like a thing in my head that I was always using, a mantra almost, was like, if your footprint cannot be wide, let it be deep. You know, if you can't sell 1,000 tickets, have the most memorable night with 40, 50, 60 people possible that they will never, ever forget. And that those people will follow you. They will not only care about your music, but they will care about you as a person. They will think about you. They'll tell their friends about you. They will want you to succeed. And so, you know, that's how I built my following, especially in those early days, was just by doing a ton of house concerts, taking any gig that I could get. And the trouble was, as you said, you know, the email or the text message, like, kind of had to know someone who knew someone. And I just remember thinking back to in 2006, like, man, if only there was just like a network, you know, like. And so fast forward about 10 years and my career had grown and been very, very fortunate and done lots of cool stuff. And I was working with a record label called Arts and Crafts, and I made a sort of like an umbrella label called Matic Records. And there was just like a bunch of young bands that I thought were awesome and nobody wanted to sign them. And I was like, well, I have access to distribution. Maybe I can try this. Turns out running a label is really hard. And none of them had agents either. So like after pitching them at every agent that I could find, nobody wanted them. I was like, well, God, I'm just going to try and get them some gigs. So I did a post on Facebook and sort of said, like, I think there's something broken with the model by which people, you know, can make a career in music. And does anybody want to host shows in their home or whatever? And within like a couple days, I had like 80 like homes in a spreadsheet, and I called it the Matic Records House Concert Series, and helped a couple of young bands that I was working with just run some simple tours across Canada, and that was great. And then I met Laura Simpson, who was my co-founder at Side Door, through a mutual artist friend named Richard Coyne in Halifax, who had said, man, if you're into this house concert thing, you got to talk to Laura. And so she had been running in Halifax like the very best house concert series that you could hope for. You know, she had like branded mugs and like, you know, the whole setup, the PA and the seating, and her kids were there at the door, you know, checking people in. And she was even like selling subscription memberships and all kinds of stuff. And she's just doing an amazing job, and was like cultivating a sold out show for any artist, because people just trusted her. And so when we connected, and she'd had some experience in the startup world, and we just realized that we had this mutual sort of dream of like this global network of, because she worked in the music industry. She worked for like a Music Nova Scotia, which would help, because we're in Canada, we have grant funding, would help artists.
God bless that grant funding.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so she was in the industry, and people would say to her, well, that's great, you can host these because you have access to artists. And she was sort of like, well, it's not that hard. Like if people just had access to artists, anyone could do this. So coming at it from her at the host side and me on the artist side, and we just realized that we had this sort of shared dream. And so she's the CEO. I'm the sort of, I have a title that doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm a co-founder. But we sort of built this together. We incorporated in 2017. We had this big light bulb moment where, you know, we'd been focusing so much on house concerts, but really, if that is like the image in your head, that's like the nucleus. But really, like the big light bulb moment was realizing, well, it didn't have to be a house. It didn't have to be a concert. It just had to be a space and a performer of any kind. So you could be bookstore, warehouse, national park, curling rink, you know, Legion, and a comedian or a dancer or any, like it could be anything.
You know you're Canadian when you reference curling rink, and that is one of your go-to examples of a venue.
Apologies. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Got it. Love it.
So we incorporated 2017. And we, you know, at the beginning, we just ran it like human computering, spreadsheets and emails. And we had this base of like 60, 70, 80 people from my initial effort. And we just kind of built it from there. And we got funding and went through like an accelerator and launched like 1.0, where people could just like log in and book their own show. It was pretty pretty rough. 2019. But, you know, by by the time the pandemic hit, we'd run about 350 shows in all kinds of places. We put like a broken social scene in a goat farm outside of Boise, Idaho, like all kinds of crazy stuff.
Sure.
And it was this amazing ride. And we had a partnership with South by, and we had planned tours for 10 artists down to Austin inside door venues.
Cool.
And of course, everything blows up, everything canceled.
Right.
So that takes us to the pandemic. And so since then, I don't know if you want me to get into this next bit, but
I think this is all great, and the backstory is brilliant, and I love to know that you're now CEO, Laura Simpson. She had this history. I was very curious about how she came into the picture. With you, it's a natural fit. It makes a lot of sense. I've heard this story. I have this. So many people. Hold for fire truck. So many people, so many singer-songwriters have that story where I wrote it down because this is brilliant. If your footprint can't be wide, let it be deep. And it's so true because, some of the most magical concert experiences I've ever had have been in front of 30 people in a living room. And, I'm similar to you. I've done, everything, all size concerts. I've done arenas, I've done, theaters, whatever. And those are fun too, but it's something, there's something special about connecting with every single person in this very intimate space, and they're holding on to every single word that you're singing and that you're saying. And there is such beauty and magic. And I think as an industry, we're so obsessed with numbers and stats and the macro. That's why I have found, I had the head of music at Twitch on the show, Tracy Patrick Chan, and he revealed this startling statistic that the artists who are making over $50,000 live streaming on Twitch are doing so from 183 people, 183 fans. Yeah. And it's like live streaming is a perfect example. It's similar to, I find so many parallels with live streaming as house concerts, as you go deep within the connection with your fan. And it's the opposite of streaming. It's the opposite of Spotify. You don't need millions and millions and millions of streams to, make to scrape by. You only need a few Dougs, as you call them. You need those. You need your cheerleaders. And you don't need that many. It's that 1,000 true fans concept. So I see it as a natural progression. I want to fast forward though, because I think, we all, I think what you did, when the pandemic hit and kind of pivoted and opened up with the live stream shows, the interactive shows that you have now over Zoom, which I watched one of the promo videos of Vance Joy, and he invited a bassoonist from God knows where, and she started playing a little bit beautifully. It was like so cool. Like that interactive show concept is really interesting, but highlight what the platform is right now. So if somebody's coming in, whether it's an artist, most likely we have artists and managers that are listening to this right now. So highlight where it is right now and how this can be beneficial for artists, worldwide.
Totally. Okay, so when the pandemic hit, the first thing we did is we wanted to recreate that same sense of intimacy that you were referencing at an in-person show in a living room kind of vibe. And, immediately the whole industry started putting a paywall on content. And it was sort of it was basically just watching YouTube, but it was maybe happening live, and that was enough, and there's a chat. And we just felt like that wasn't quite enough. It wasn't core to the central feeling of what Side Door was. Okay. So we started doing shows over Zoom, and very quickly we built a secure ticketing portal for Zoom. So you can sell up to 1,000 tickets to a Zoom meeting, just like we're having right now, but it's completely secure. You can't share the link. There's no Zoom bombers. The only way in is through being logged into Side Door and having a ticket in your possession.
Cool.
And so, we've been able to have shows for Vance Joy and Tom Odell and
is this because you have is this because you have a direct partnership with Zoom, or is this a feature that Zoom has released where anybody could theoretically set up a ticketing thing?
It is a very sophisticated back end. It's we don't have a contract with Zoom. We're using their APIs, but we just kind of hacked together a really sophisticated system that allows there's no registration emails or corporate Zoom BS or anything. Like it's really slick. It's really polished. It sort of feels like you're just clicking on a button and all of a sudden you're in a Zoom meeting with Vance Joy. But in the background, there's this like really sophisticated thing pinging back and forth between Sidedoor and Zoom, checking a ticket manifest, creating an instant pre-registration and then portaling them in.
Yeah, I'm always curious how those. I've attended and spoken at a few music conferences over the pandemic that used the Zoom technology, but it was skinned in this really incredible, very complicated infrastructure of the festival, where people bought tickets to the festival, and the breakout rooms were. I mean, you can do a lot with it. Most people don't, and so that's cool that you. You're one of those that do that. Okay, so that makes sense. Sweet.
So there's the Zoom ticketing, but then there's also just like hacking the actual experience of being in the Zoom, right? So like we train people to moderate these shows and run the multi-spotlight and scan the chat for quality people to bring up in between songs. And so truly, like rather than focusing on a show in the typical sense, it was more like a hang. Like you're kind of hanging with Vance Joy for an hour. He's going to play a handful of songs. He's going to do some chit chat, some Q&A, sort of like a meet and greet with like the front row of every city all at the same time.
Amazing. I love that.
And 1,000 cameras on at once. So you're seeing people like landscaping and baking and crying and dancing, and they're playing with their kids and they're petting their dog. It's like humanity in a jar. And I feel like if there's one thing I learned throughout online shows in the pandemic is that there is no production spend that will recreate the sense of being at a real show. Like you can have the best setup, the best live stream rig. It still feels like it's coming through a box. However, if you keep the production exceptionally simple and you instead focus all of your energy into trying to cultivate something that is fleeting and minute to minute and unravels in real time and feels visceral and, then you create this sense of connection with your audience. And eerily, there are some situations where it's more impactful, more earnest, more direct, more intense. People are crying. I've seen people get engaged in the middle of a Vance Joy show. I've seen people like just bawling their eyes out at a Tom O'Bell show. There was a Jill Barber show for Mother's Day where, people hadn't seen their moms in forever, and they're like dedicating songs to their mom, and then she plays a song. Everyone's crying. Like it's just... It's so cathartic and so crazy. So that was the first type of online show that we leaned into. And then obviously there is a big appetite for live streaming as well. So we created a second online lane for what we call broadcast, but it's a live stream scenario. We use a third-party provider called Mux. It's the same as a lot of the other competitors like Veeps and stuff.
Yep.
And there's a chat and there's tipping and there's all the kind of stuff that you would expect from like a ticketed live stream experience. Okay. So there's these two different lanes of online shows, and you can actually connect them. So we had, for instance, like we did a show for Dream Serenade, which had Feist and Hayden and Bare Naked Ladies and a bunch of bands, and it's a fundraiser that happens every year in Toronto at Massey Hall. So we did it online, and we sold out the 1,000 Zoom tickets, and then we restreamed it in real time to a securely ticketed broadcast lane. So you kind of have like an overflow of the live stream of the interactive events. So the people who are watching the live stream are still seeing the interactivity. They're seeing all the people, the 1,000 people on camera, but they are just themselves can't turn on their own camera. So that was a way that we sort of was able to kind of create like tiers of ticketing, So we have the two lanes. And so now, long-winded answer, I'm sorry, to where we are right now, we are sort of, as of course, we're sort of in this kind of over the pandemic, kind of like back into in-person shows, but not really. Some people are still hesitant. So we're kind of like a choose your own adventure at this point. Like you've got your two types of online shows, or you can do in-person shows. And really what we've realized is that we kind of have two simultaneous products that work interchangeably. We've got a really sophisticated ticketing IP with like tiered ticketing, name your price options, sophisticated guest list management.
I want to pause there for a second because the tiered ticketing is really interesting. I spoke to this to the head of the founder of Abney Park, this kind of steampunk band out of Seattle, and they did live stream shows over the pandemic, and they made $250,000 on their live stream show, just 10 live stream shows. They made like $25,000 a show. It's crazy. But he really hit the point of these tiered tickets. He's like, they almost half their money was made in kind of the quote unquote backstage access ticket that he sold for $100. Was like the normal ticket was $15 or something. But, they would, after the show, there'd be this like little backstage hang thing, and people would come, and what they did was, it was essentially another concert, except in between each song, they would take a shot of hard liquor. And so basically their fans got to just watch them get drunk on camera and interact with the chat box, and people paid $100 for that. Amazing. But it was like a way, so talk to me about how your tiered ticketing works, and is it integrated into the platform, and what kind of packages have you seen people use for those?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that like, it's like if you're going to buy a ticket on an airplane, they always give you like 4 different tiers, right? And you can pay for the one that feels right to you. Everybody has a different amount of money or a different relationship with money. And they all, like, what we know about the arts is that they want to give you what they can. They want to support you.
Yes.
And so when you just give people that opportunity, so like, we have name your price. So people can set like a minimum and a suggested price, but if somebody wants to give you $200, they can do that. Cool. But then on top of the name your price, we have the tiers. So you can set up any number of tickets for any number of, they can be flat rate or they can be name your price. I'll give you an example of a thing that I did personally a little while ago. I was running an online screening of a documentary that was made about me. And so we did like a $12 minimum, $20 suggested base entry. So people could pay as little as 12, but suggested 20 if they wanted to pay more, they could. And that sort of got you like the screening and the replay. And then we did another one that was minimum 25. And that one was, you would get the same thing as before, but then you would also get an MP3 recording of the concert where the documentary was filmed that you could play like in full, just here's the concert. And almost as many people paid for the $25 ticket for an MP3 as did pay the other one. And then there was a third tier.
Wow.
Where I said for $50, you fill out this Google form and I will send you a video shout out. It could be for you. It could be for your wife or whatever. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas, whatever.
How many of those did you have to do?
I did close to 50 of them.
Oh my gosh.
But so, like here you have a situation where people were willing and more than willing in some cases. Sure. Sometimes they opted to pay $100 instead of 50 just because they wanted to. And so over the course of this thing, rather than having like a baseline of $15 a ticket, I think that in the end, the average price paid per customer was like $26 or something like that.
Incredible.
So it just really skews everything up, And truly, like, people want to support you if they can. They really, really, truly do. If your art means something to them. And it's the same thing for me. Like, anytime like an artist friend puts me on the guest list and I go to their show here in Vancouver, I buy like $70 worth of merch at the merch table because
right.
I just want to like give it back.
Likewise. Yeah. That's great. No, and Derek Sivers says your fans want to pay you, let them. So offering ways to allow your fans to pay you more money is huge. The name your price feature is amazing, and I love that Bandcamp does that. And that's great. And because, these are live stream shows and not, there is no physical merch table. You can go and give them $70, the thing. That's nice that, you have these options. So, what are you seeing now in terms of how artists are using this? Are artists coming to Side Door, registering, booking their own shows, inviting people here, and it's like this has just kind of become a monetized version, a ticketed live stream a la Stage It or Veeps or something like that? Or are hosts, spaces, presenters coming in there, putting on, home concerts or concerts in there? I mean, like, where's the focus now? Or is it both?
It's kind of all of the above. So we have seasonal presenters running, 30 shows or like 15 shows with hybrid tickets online and in person. We've got artists coming and just like, as an artist, you could set up a profile and book yourself an online show in like 5 minutes. Okay. So there, what we're realizing is that we're kind of serving a lot of different types of people. We've got like seasoned professionals. We've got like community halls with a mandate to do something for their community, who are doing online versions and in-person versions. So earlier when I said like choose your own adventure, it's, as a startup, it's really tricky because serving lots of masters is not easy. And you kind of want to serve like as few, but do a really good job types of, and then, and just get more and more of those. But so, we kind of have these two products, right? Like there's really sophisticated ticketing, beautiful, polished ticketing. And some people only use that. Like some people don't use our marketplace at all. Like some people aren't, connecting with other users. But then there is the marketplace, and that concept, that is the one that is like close to my heart. Like I like the fact that we are allowing artists to continue to make money throughout the pandemic. But I think you probably would agree that online shows, you play to your silo. It's very hard to build an audience with online shows. And when I think about how I built an audience, and when I think about the only way that I know how to create like true long-term meaningful relationships with an audience is through live performance. And so, my vision, like right now we have over 2,000 alternative venue spaces in North America and about 5,000 artists. I want... Hold
on. You said, say that stat again. You have 2,000 live performance spaces in North America. Is that right?
Yeah, we've got over 2,000 like alternative venue spaces. So that's bookstores, libraries, living rooms, backyards, barns, curling rinks.
Curling rinks.
And my vision.
Yes.
And this has happened, literally on the platform. But my vision for all artists is you like stop for lunch. You're like, hey, we got a day off in, Sacramento next Thursday. What spaces are on Side Door? And so you look on Side Door, you find yourself a cool space, been well reviewed. Maybe some of your pals have played there before, or some artists you recognize. And so you send them a note and you get into the show booking UI with them and you build a show over lunch. And by the time you've finished your soup, you've got a show booked, up, ticketed for next Thursday. And so like what happens is that when you book a show collaboratively on Side Door, that ticket revenue gets held in escrow. You have like a unique automated split on the show. You can like really, really smart settlements where everyone gets paid out their share automatically after the show. So you don't ever have to ask to be paid. And so the idea is like, bam, over the course of the lunch, I've booked myself a show. I've posted on socials. It's already on sale. It's already moving tickets. And so this idea that like shows need to be booked 6 months in advance by an agent over a series of phone calls, like we can automate this. And like if you look at it like a funnel, you've got a handful of venues down here, and you've got, I'll do it this way so my camera can see. And out here, you got all the artists, right? And so labels, managers, agents, promoters, they gatekeep for the venues. They provide a service to the venues to keep those venues full so that those venues can continue to sell booze, so that those venues can survive and stay open. It's not evil. There's nothing evil going on here. Everybody is winning in this situation, except for the fact that 97% of touring acts do not have a booking agent booking their shows for them. So you've got 97% of artists up here who can't make their way through the funnel, and they burn out, and they kind of like give up or whatever, or they struggle. And so our whole thing is like, what if this funnel was a sieve? What if all of these artists could have a one-to-one relationship, and instead of having 9 small to mid-sized clubs in Chicago, why not like 900 or 9,000? Like there are like there could be so many venues if you think about all the commercial spaces and private offices and.
So I that's a beautiful vision, and I hope we get there. And I'm fully on board with all that you said. So tell me where the reality's at right now of how this is working, because it's hard enough running a venue, and if you have a space, there's the Peer Space Network in America. I'm not sure if it's in Canada, but you can rent out your space for $50 an hour or whatever. But what it really takes, what I think going back to the core is it takes a Doug in every city. It takes that cheerleader to invite all their friends and say, hey, you're going to love Dan Mangan. He's going to be your favorite artist. You got to come. Just trust me. Yes, it's going to pay $20 to come, but I promise you it's going to be the best evening ever. And he riles up 60 of his friends to come to your show in his living room. How does that happen? And is it happening that way And how does that all fit into this?
At this point, that is most of the way. So it may come to a point where, like, you know, on Side Door, you can like rent a hall for the night and you pay a deposit or whatever, you know, it's more transactional. At this point, what I am way more interested in is the Doug effect. Like I want somebody, a regular person who's not in the industry, to take a chance on an artist that they just heard of and they met them over Side Door, but they liked them. And they go, hey, this person's great. Like, you know, let's do something. We'll do it in my backyard. And, you know, it's hard to rent a venue and it's hard to keep a venue afloat. But a lot of, like, you know, if you're like a residential host on Side Door, chances are you're doing like maybe 4 a year. So it's like, you know, it's a little bit more spaced out. We have some that are doing like maybe 1 a week, which are more like commercial spaces, bookstores and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so but the nice thing is that you can kind of interact with the platform in the way that suits your life and brings you, you know, sparks joy in for you. Yeah. And that truly is what I'm most interested in. And that's like the behavior that we're trying to teach the most of. And the truth is that when you go see Ari perform at Doug's place, you're looking around like, man, this is so special. And you're seeing everyone smiling and you're seeing the way that they look at Doug. And they're going, Doug, man, how'd you pull this together? You know, and you kind of go, this doesn't look that hard. You know, like, you kind of have to see it. And then you go, oh man, like how many people went to a So Far show and then go like, oh, I could do this. I want to help run this. I have good taste in music, you know? Yeah. And so our value prop, like we love that So Far has sort of proven that there is appetite for these small, intimate shows. I think that there's some issues with the model of how artists are getting paid, and that's been well publicized. Right. But, you know, what they've done a really amazing job of is like fostering this vibe of these experiences. And so people would go to it and it would grow really organically. And so what we're kind of doing is taking that like 30,000 foot view where we're sort of giving people the engine whereby they can be their own So Far sounds. You can curate for your community.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a great idea and great concept. So where are we at right now in terms of like, if I were so I just registered an account as an artist. I went on, I'm like, great, I want to book you mentioned like, let's, fill in the holes of my tour or potentially book a tour, or let's just say I want to try this out in, LA. That's where I am in the area. So I like put in LA, let me look at the spaces, is there like, I didn't see a map feature where I could see where all the hosts are. So I'd be like, oh, let me just route a tour and connect with all of these hosts. So I just searched LA and I saw, and like there were a few venues that it didn't seem like, and most of them I don't think had ever hosted an event before, and I don't think a lot of them really maybe understood what it was. There was one that I think was just like that we can host your live streams. Then I was like, well, I'm going to have to pay you a rental fee? Is this just like peer space? Right. How does this really work right now? And I guess what I'm getting at is how many artists are signing on fresh saying, I want to find my Doug in every city, and I want to book a show. I don't have any fans in the Midwest, and let's go. How can I book some shows out there when I'm heading out to the East Coast or whatever? Like, tell me where we're at right now, realistically. So about 65% of our spaces are still in Canada. That's where we started. That's kind of like where we proved the concept.
And what we found is that it requires a bit of a critical mass until that sort of like wheel can turn and like anyone can jump in and start like actually like finding great success. So obviously we're doing everything we can to make sure that LA has as many hosts as possible in New York and Chicago and Dallas and, all those sort of population centers. And, we've got a pretty good luck in Nashville. And what we were finding is that pre-pandemic, a lot of these communities were sort of building organically because we'd get one host and then people would go to a show. And then from that show, we'd get like 3 or 4 more hosts who kind of saw what was going on and wanted to use it as well. Cool. And then, of course, the pandemic blindsided everything and all of that momentum that we had. So, and then, we at the pre-pandemic, we had one developer. We were a very, very small, lean outfit. Through the pandemic, we closed a funding round. We hired, 5 more developers and a product manager. Things are moving much more swiftly now when it comes to the product. And so now like we focused so much on the online stuff, like the amount of tech that we built for all of this crazy ticketing and Zoom and broadcast and everything. So now we're at this really tricky point where we are starting to refocus our money and our energy and our build and our sort of like outside the product efforts of like recruiting, and we're trying to really bring the in-person concept back to the forefront. It's tricky. It's a tricky time. I don't know if people are like super stoked to have strangers in their home yet, you know?
Right.
So we're battling some sort of like, let's say, zeitgeist climate stuff that is not well timed for us on the in-person stuff.
Sure.
However, the silver lining is that, I mean, I don't want to say silver lining because it sucks, but like, talk to your agent about trying to get a hold on any decent venue in 2022 on a Friday or Saturday. Like, every venue that has survived is booked solid.
Right.
So there's never been a bigger squeeze on performance spaces.
Yes.
So we believe that,
not to mention all the venues that have shut down,
of course,
over the last couple of years. And so it's like, yes, every artist wants to get back on the road and tour. Every venue is booked solid, in part because so many other venues that would naturally host a lot of this demand have closed up shop. So I think this is the perfect time to do this, and that like, already organically, I don't know what it's like up there, but there were so many backyard concert series and like alternative venues that popped up, because of venue shutting down, but also just because of the restrictions, and people are just wanting to play and just
lots of outdoor stuff.
Lots of outdoor stuff.
Yeah. And we're in the winter now, so, I mean, suffice to say, like, we don't have as many spaces in LA as I would like, and it's an ongoing effort to make sure that, because that experience that you've had, that's too bad. Like, I want you to go on there and be like, oh man, like, if you were in greater Toronto area where there's like, 400 spaces,
I mean, there are a lot of Canadian musicians listening to this right now. So everyone who's listening to this in Canada, hop on and book yourself a tour, book yourself some shows.
The other thing I will say is, like, every artist, you and me both, probably who's interested in this at all, probably knows a few house concert series and a few hosts that they've worked with in the past. Like, my hope is that this concept is exciting enough that you would send an email or a text to those hosts and be like, you might want to check this out, because, essentially we are trying to solve the problems for all sides of the equation. We're trying to solve the problem for artists. And what we've learned is that really the only way that we can solve problems for artists is by solving problems for the hosts, because if there are no hosts, then this whole thing collapses, right?
Exactly.
So it's, it's an ongoing, it's a bit of chicken and the egg.
It makes sense. And I mean, so why would a host choose to use your platform? You take a 10% cut. I know that hosts and artists can negotiate the split. Hosts can keep up to 40%, but that can be 0% if they want to give it all to the artist. But why not just them do it on their own and email or text with the artist and just set it up organically, the traditional old school method?
So a handful of things. One is we do handle all the PRO remittance. So one thing we didn't want is artists submitting a set list from a show, and then, Doug gets an email from BMI or ASCAP and says, hey, you owe us money from this show that happened at your venue. And so we wanted to protect all of our users. And so we do all automatic PRO remittance for in-person shows or for online shows.
What about live music licensing? If you're going that far, it's great you're getting the PRO blanket licenses and doing all that stuff and whatnot. But I mean, we got pretty hefty licenses to do a live music space, in any city in America. Yeah.
You mean like to actually handle it like for like putting on Spotify while people are...
No. Licensing. I mean, the city of Los Angeles, that's if you're going that far, because like all of the house concert series that I'm talking about, they're not licensing with the city. They're not paying BMI or ASCAP or whatever. It's like and like Ask Kevin BMI are not coming after house concert series because, for one, I believe there's a clause in there you can play music privately in your home for some people or whatever. I don't know if you charge tickets, there might be whatever.
I think if it's like, passing the hat sort of is the
Gotcha.
charging access. But so, part of what we're doing here is we're trying to daylight this activity that has traditionally happened through cash, traditionally happened underground, and trying to make it legitimate so that artists can give this, give a CSV spit out to their accountant and say, these are the gig. I just made $100,000 playing house concerts this year. Here's my legitimate business organizing and running. So PRO remittance is something we handle. Also, a lot of hosts, let's say you can sell some tickets and you have a nice, a lot of hosts don't want to be handling a couple $1,000s in cash, and they don't want it going through their bank account because they don't want the IRS coming after them saying, where's this money coming from and why and who's it going to? So through our system, you can find an artist, you can connect with them, you can book and create like a digital smart contract with them that is transparent. You can both check sales in real time. Okay. And then after the show, if let's say you only want to take 5% or you want to take 0% and you don't want to handle the money at all because that's not why you're doing it, the artist will get paid all of their share. You have access to all the show details because you're logged in. However, basically everyone gets paid out automatically their share. So you can wash your hands of it and say, look, I'm just doing this for the love of it. I'm doing it to discover art and I'm doing it to, provide a service for my community. And so you can essentially be completely above board, completely legit, completely, legal in every sense, and still have the intimacy, still have the awesome, cool, fuzzy stuff. So all of these questions, these are really important for questions that we've been facing from the beginning of like, well, what services can we provide to entice those hosts to come on, to stay and connect with artists so that more artists can have a place to play. So those are the things we're trying to solve. That's great. And just, to give some stats, I saw on your website, maybe you can update these or something, but you've sold 120,000 tickets, I guess. You've had over 550 in-person shows and have paid out over $1 million to artists. Is that correct? Yeah, growing all the time. That's probably a few months old or something like that. But it's not probably not double that. It's And what would you say the average for the in-person concerts, I guess the median number, not counting the Bare Naked Ladies show, the median number of attendees and the median amount of money that artists are walking with from these in-person alternative venue shows? Yeah. So pre-pandemic, average ticket price was like $20. Okay. And average attendance was like somewhere around like high 30s, maybe low 40s. And people were walking away with average like $500 to $900 kind of thing. Okay. And we felt like that was great considering that a lot of these people were making $50 playing to the same amount of people in a club, or something. Right. It's all about, in this situation, more of the money goes to the artist. And, really that club they made the mistake. It's like they shouldn't have had the artist that could only fill 40 people in a 200 space. They should have had it, it's just sort of like a improper delegation of space. So it's like we're really trying to serve that echelon. Now it's interesting because we've seen the ticket price just skyrocket. Like now in this sort of like slightly post-pandemic world for in-person shows, we've seen people paying 25, 30, 40 easily for a show, even if it's not like a huge name. And people are sort of happy to pay it. I think they want to put money in artists' pockets. And beyond that, I think that they, they're just so hungry for anything, hungry for any kind of artistic experience. So, I don't have the number on me right now for like what the average take home is, but you can kind of do the math. No, yeah, that's great. So, where do you see this going? I mean, I know the dream that you mentioned before, which is great. And I hope that happens because I think every artist that's listening to this is just like, man, I would love
to be able to book a show in a town I've never been to, knowing nobody there, having 0 fans there, and having 30 people show up and walking with $500 to $900. I mean, that's the dream right there, and then build it that way. That's amazing by, using this platform, and it's seemingly streamlined. It's like, okay, so Graham Colton, fellow singer-songwriter, I'm sure you're familiar with his startup, Fanswell, which did pretty much the same thing. It went under after a few years, couldn't make it work. I'm curious why you think this is going to work this way. I know you're not, he said the same thing to me early on when we talked of like the beautiful, deep experience of house concerts. Like, believe me, I'm rooting for everybody. I love this concept. I want this to work desperately. And then there's, on the other end, there's the tried and true concerts in your home, for as horrendous as their website looks and has looked, and the infrastructure of their website, they've been around for 15 years and have been doing the thing and have a network of similarly of thousands of shows all over the country, and the world actually at this point, all over the world, and of dedicated hosts, and artists. It's they don't do the transactions like you do. Fanswell did do the transactions. And they do more of a pass the hat kind of thing. They just facilitate these concerts with hosts and
pay
artists.
A membership, I think, to like
you pay exactly. You pay you pay a yearly membership. The artist does, so you can kind of set that up. So I guess tell me, where is this? Have you found? Like, I'm curious. Are you going to stay on the road of these in-person live concerts, or did you notice that the money is in interactive live stream shows, and we're actually going to focus more of our efforts there, or we're going to try to do both of these things, and hopefully it's sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to try and do both. I mean, certainly there's more money in the online stuff. There's no question, right? Like, we had shows grossing $50,000-$60,000 or doing online shows, and that's wild, right? Like, that's and the amazing thing about online shows is that the production cost can be quite like, there's no hotels involved. You can do it from home, Now, to do like a really spectacular production can be costly with techs and stuff, but the type of people who can sell lots of tickets can also afford to pay those techs. I mean, truly, it is, I don't want to use any cliches here in the post-pandemic world, but like, it's kind of a whole new world, right? Like, I know that, because I did 12 online interactive shows where I met people from like Estonia and Indonesia and Brazil and India who were tuning in. I met them, I unmuted them. I know the value of those shows, and they helped pay my mortgage throughout the pandemic. There's no question. And, what a brilliant outlet that was. I'm going to continue to use that. Every time I release new music, I'm going to probably have like a session where I can, go through the splits and show everybody the stems and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of value in online shows. So in a sense, these two worlds can kind of feed each other, right? Like, we can bring people into Side Doors World as an audience member in the online shows, educate them about what it is that we do, make them realize, hey, you could potentially host, Fans Joy or whatever, in your home if you sign up your space. So, that crux of like turning the wheel, like the hosts attract the artists attract the fans. Our job is to turn those fans into hosts. And so that in a nutshell is, and so, if we do it well and we do it right, then we win. And if we do it poorly, then we fail. And, we're a venture-backed company. We are doing everything we can to move quickly and in the right direction. Honestly, timing is, as you said, kind of on our side. Like, the fact that all these venues have closed, and the fact that I think, because the pandemic has sort of given like this, it's rattled the cage of our behavior patterns in so many ways. That as we come out of this, maybe people more than ever are like, you know what? I don't really want to like get a babysitter and pay to drive downtown and get a valet for the car. But you're telling me I could just host a concert in my backyard, invite all my friends, and like what about a decentralized live entertainment system that wasn't completely fully beholden to a handful of downtown core and downtowns? Like, there's 26 boroughs of Chicago that all have more than 50,000 people in them. To me, that is 26 touring markets. There could be,
wow. Yeah.
You know, like that is enormous. Like there could be 5,000 spaces to play just in Chicago.
That's so true. I mean, I'm on my house concert tours. I think I did 4 back-to-back shows in Phoenix just because there were 4 people individual. I don't think at the time I could bring 50 people to my show in Phoenix, but I ended up playing in front of like 100 some people through those 4, concerts because there were 4 super fans in Phoenix that hosted me in their backyard and in their thing. And, and it was great. And then, building up the fan base that way and then going back. And then I could do a club and bring 100 people or whatever. And that's it. No doubt. It's like, listen, I'm rooting for you. I really hope this works because
But
think
your
it's
healthy
brilliant.
Skepticism is valid.
Yeah.
And because it's a very, very hard thing to do that we're doing. We're doing it with an unbelievable amount of intention and like philosophy about why we're doing it and how we're doing it and trying to build it. But like that skepticism that you're speaking of like, well, why would people host things in their home or in their bookstore or whatever? Everyone has got different reasons. Bookstores want traffic. I saw a show here in town. Tim Baker played at Massey Books in Chinatown. And the show was just beautiful. It was stunning. Tim's an amazing performer. And every time I walk by that bookstore, I go in because I connotate with that night. And half the time I walk in there, I walk out with a book. Like they've created traffic and like community brand association. Like there are reasons by which people might want to do this.
Yes.
The bookstore closes at 7. Well, why not reopen at 7:30 and use those extra hours to, make more money? They were selling booze. They got a liquor license, the whole thing.
Wow.
So everyone has their different reasons for doing this. But the question is like, will hosts host shows? That's a question,
Yeah.
And what we found is that people are willing to do something for free that you could not pay them enough to do. If you said, hey, can I rent your backyard for the night? Somebody would be like, $500.
Right.
But like if they're doing it for reasons that are existential, it's like, arguably spiritual.
Yes.
Then, they will lose money to try and do something that feeds their soul. And, it's a gamble. The whole thing is a gamble. I mean, like,
So could I log on? I do like how when I created an artist profile, it was fairly easy to jump between like seeing the fan view or the host, like what shows are happening, that kind of thing. Is it true where any artist can log on, let's say they want to just host a show at home and they just don't want to deal with Eventbrite or a ticketing platform or something like that and do it on this? That's the base at the core. Every artist could theoretically be a host, and it could start within the artist community hosting other artists too,
Jam
right?
spaces, absolutely, But like invite people down to your barn that you rehearse in or whatever. Absolutely.
I think it's also a great way that artists, musicians can network with each other and support the touring artists that are coming through. And like, if an artist has a space, which I know a lot of artists do have, backyards, living room, rehearsal spaces, whatever, that they could theoretically host a little house concert. It could even start there. Now, I know the magic is, it's a magical experience for non-musicians that have never experienced something like that before. It's like crazy to show up somewhere and there's a professional musician sitting in someone's living room playing for you, and that's incredible. But that's great. So I'm encouraging everybody to go on and check it out and give it a whirl. Host a concert, book one, try it out, and let me know. Let me know how it goes. Everyone, write me.
And anyone who already does this kind of thing, send them there too. And like, who's already hosted a show, who might be interested in doing more. There are lots of tools that we provide to support on the back end. So many different, like for online shows, we provide customer support. We also provide tech support to the users.
Yeah.
If you want to jump on, like you can kick the tires on there. There's nothing that's obligating. You can set up a profile, like a space profile or an artist profile, and just kind of mess around and see what's possible. One of the other features that I wanted to mention before we got off here is, and this is something that's really exciting to me, is you can drop an availability pin as an artist of where you want to play with a range of space and a date range. And every single host within that bubble, that radius pin that you drop, will get an email saying, Ari's looking for shows in your area between this date and this date. And so, that was like that's
the magic feature. That's what I was looking for. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to look for that now when I log in, because that's the magic feature. That's exactly what. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's
and it works. There was there's an artist recently who was coming to Vancouver to do like a private thing, and then it was like Monday, and they wanted to book a show on the Friday, and then within a half an hour they found a host. They booked the show. The show was on sale. It sold out the next day. 50 tickets at $50. And it was it all happened immediately. And the show was 3.5 days later.
Brilliant. I love that. I'm curious, being a co-founder of this startup that is VC backed, where there's a lot of demands and pressures, and you're growing rapidly, and there's a gazillion moving parts. You have a 2022, you have a tour booked for February through April. How much time are you spending on your music career versus Side Door?
It's been, I joke that, I got into music, so I never have to have a real job. Now I have 2 real jobs. And I've got 2 little kids. Man, it's a lot. Everything. Basically through the pandemic, I was working on creative stuff Friday afternoons. That's what I had to work. So I've been making a record, long distance with a guy in Chicago, amazing producer named Drew Brown. He's worked with a lot of my favorite artists like Radiohead and Beck. And so we've been working on this thing long distance. And so we're sort of starting to gear up for next year. I mean, to be honest, it's going to be intense, like trying to juggle the startup thing and touring and releasing an album. What we have found, for me personally, is that like in the early days of Side Door, my fans and my following helped bring attention to Side Door. And as Side Door grows, weirdly, it's starting to bring more attention to me as an artist too, which is kind of like an interesting symbiotic relationship there. So I don't have like a clear answer other than my wife is going to hate me probably really soon. I'm just going to be very, very busy. But I'm trying and doing my best.
Did you book your tour with Side Door?
No, usually, no, it's in like clubs and theaters and stuff like that. It's in larger venues. But generally on every tour, I will, I'll mention Side Door from the stage, and we'll get a couple of host signups every night. Cool. And then I'll bookend or take a day off, and last minute I'll book something weird in some small town or something like that, and do something really fun and kind of off the cuff. Yeah.
Love it. Well, Dan, this is great, and thank you for sharing the story and your vision and for running this thing. I mean, this is something, as a singer-songwriter, but I think I speak for all indie musicians out there, is like something that we need, and we need more alternative spaces to perform. We need more of those Dougs in every city that will be more Dougs, the Doug effect. We need the Doug effect everywhere we go. And we need the infrastructure for, the artists out there that do have a substantial fan base that can do those live stream shows. I love that you've built up that infrastructure for them as well, and to make it seamless. I always appreciate when musicians found companies and run companies, and as a fellow musician, business owner, company CEO, dude, whatever, it's like I feel you. I know the balance. I know the challenge with the balance. I released a record this year too, but yeah.
And how many parallels do you see between building an audience and building a company? It's like I notice it all the time. I'm just like, oh man, this like building Side Door feels so much like building an audience.
It's like, Seth Godin says, find your tribe, and whatever your tribe is if it's going to be, fans who like your music, or just users for your platform or program, or customers or whatever you're doing. So yeah.
And I didn't go to business school. I cut my teeth in the corner of bars just like you did. But, there have been countless times as we plan the product, as we, fundraise, as we do all these things, that it becomes really strangely obvious that there's like few people more uniquely prepared to build this thing than me, having had all those years playing in those living rooms, knowing this ecosystem, this little corner of the sandbox in the music industry. Very few people know it any better than I do. Yes. And so that has given me like, you know, sort of like wind under the sails to be like, okay, well, I think we can do this because it's really, really hard. You know?
I fully feel you and understand. I have one final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
Well, I guess I'll have two answers, because there's me personally as an artist, and then there's Side Door.
Okay.
This has been my goal forever. I have a wonderful career in Canada. I can sell 3,000 tickets in my hometown, sold out Massey Hall in Toronto. You know, that is special that I can play those theaters, those kind of like soft seaters, or maybe just like the large clubs. For me to feel like I have made it would be if I could transfer that into the States. Like if I could do like that same size venue in Cincinnati, to me, that would mean like real proper sort of like I've arrived. You know, I don't have ambitions of arenas. That's never been my goal. I'm not interested in that. But if I could do that, if I could do the soft seaters in every American major city, that'd be great.
Cool.
And for Side Door, it's very, very simple. And this has been the vision from day one. I want to see 100,000 artists who you've never heard of, or maybe barely heard of, making $100,000 a year. And to me, that would be the beginnings of an incredible, like a worldwide middle class of artistry, of people who are not famous, who have maybe not been embraced by the industry at large, but are making like a carpenter's wage doing what they love, and they are able to quit their day jobs. That, to me, that's the vision.
I love it. Well, we will all meditate on that vision and hope that it comes true. Both of those visions. You let me know when you're playing LA, and I'll be first in line to get that ticket.
Amazing.
Dan Mangan,
we'll have a high five. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much.